The following is a Comfortably Zoned Radio Network production.
Hi, everybody, and a very pleasant good evening to you wherever you may be. Comfortably Zoned Radio is on the air, and this is the 50s, when bums and jints walk the streets of New York. I'm Peter Trunk, and with me is Ronnie Rabinovitz and Ralph Zig Tyko. Hello, Ronnie. How are you? How you feeling?
How you doing? I'm doing good. How are you, Peter?
Well, we're all glad to hear your voice again. We were a little bit nervous because you had the flu, you had pneumonia, you had a lot of bad things happening to you lately. I hope you're recovered.
I'm feeling really well, thank you. How are you?
All right. Ralph, how you doing?
Oh, I didn't hear that. You cut out a little bit. I am fine, and so happy Ronnie is back off the DL.
Yeah.
Thank
we
you,
miss
buddy.
you when you're not
Appreciate
here,
it.
and hey, Peter's understating it. We're worried the hell about you.
I'm doing good. I'm doing good. Thank you.
Good.
I feel really good.
Continue to recover, and I know the cold and the winter in Minnesota, all over the country except for California, I might add.
Yeah, I know.
We have earthquakes, fires, and floods.
That's right.
And mudslides. It's it's been a rough year all around.
It has.
But I'll tell you, Ronnie, it's never been colder, and I would venture to say that can't be helping your bronchitis and what have you.
And it's supposed to warm up, and starting tomorrow, it was like 28 today. And it's going to be in the 30s and 40s the rest of the week. So that's good.
Wow.
And
that'll be good.
We're hustling and bustling around here because Super Bowl is coming to Minneapolis.
That's right. Right around the corner from you.
Right around the corner from me. So it's going to be crazy around here. They're talking about 1 million people could come into the Twin Cities. Can you believe that?
That's pretty good.
Yeah.
I want to ask you, Ronnie, because the theme of the show was switching to the 50s. What was it like in the 50s? It was before the Vikings for a kid as a football fan. Who did you?
Well, I was a Chicago Bear fan, and still am. I grew up in Wisconsin.
Okay.
I grew up in Wisconsin, and I was always a Bear fan, not a Packers fan.
So the name Ed O'Bradovich is big in your heart.
Oh, that J.C. Caroline? You weren't kidding.
Right.
George Blanda?
You go back as far as Blanda. Wow.
Oh, way back. Mike Ditka. The Bears always had two great things. A great middle linebacker and a great running back. Other than that, nothing. No quarterbacks since Sid Luckman.
Right. Well, I'll tell you what, the big story for me with the Bears was the Gale Sayers. I can't think of the running back who
Brian Piccolo.
Wow, that
Wasn't
tugged
that
at
something?
the heartstrings.
Yeah, it sure did. It was a great movie and a great story.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I bet you remember when the Bears played the Giants for the championship of the National Football League.
I sure
This is before Super Bowl time, so we're dating ourselves a little bit, and
yeah, well, we always do that.
Okay.
But you know the Bears.
And there's nothing wrong with that either. We're all proud to have made it this far and be able to have our memories intact and pass on what we went through. The 50s were a very misjudged time. Everybody looks back and says, well, they're the good old days, and it's back when things were mellow, where there wasn't much of a difference between a Democrat and a Republican. Well, there was a lot going on in the 50s, what with Korea and the Cold War and integration and women's rights and disabilities and everything. It was very tumultuous times. And we got through it. Not everybody did. So,
That's true.
That we tend
well,
to go back.
Something. If you ever hear a guy say, when he's referring to the 1950s, someone our age, and he says, yeah, those were the good old days. Times were simple. Times were easy. You didn't have to do too much. Well, first of all, the guy's white. That's number one. The guy's definitely white.
Yeah.
You don't want to be black. First of all, you don't want to be black. Go back to those days. Okay?
No way.
Another thing, you don't want to be a woman. You don't want to be a Jew. You don't want to be anything like that. You don't want to be gay. You don't want to go back to those days. So when a guy says to me, personally, those were the good old days, right away I know what I'm dealing with. I'm dealing with someone who's not really thinking that strongly. And I'll tell you another thing. In the 50s, we were 10 years old. Maybe. Right. Maybe we were 8. Maybe we were 7. Maybe we were 6. We didn't have any bills to pay. We didn't have anything to pay. When we look back on those days, it was like dining going to heaven. All you did was eat ice cream in the summertime. You get all kinds of gifts at Christmas time. You didn't know, but many people, I'll speak from my own past. Many people back then didn't know what a black looked like or spoke like, didn't know what a Jew looked like, spoke like, thought of, didn't know anything about anything. All you did back then, you used to get up and you go through your routine and everything was copacetic and everything was fine. And your mommy was there, your daddy was there. Maybe you had a dog, you had a family car, you went to the beach, you did all kinds of stuff like that. So now when people look back, they go, oh, those were the good old days. Well, yeah. I'm here to tell you that for some people, certainly they were the good old days. For many people, they were anything but the good old days.
Absolutely.
Feelings? What do you think?
Ronnie, you want to go first on this? Because I'm going to ask about the McCarthy days and how they tainted the 50s and they made the 50s anything but the good old days. If you were in the entertainment business, especially, the careers were ruined. I can go back to a Woody Allen movie called The Front, if you guys remember that. Woody Allen is certainly not known for social studies by any means, but this was a serious movie, and
yes, it was.
It was about this the character that was one of those who wasn't blackballed in those days, and who blackballed writers ran their work through so they could be published, because McCarthy put the stain of communism on them, and they were blackballed in the industry. And if you're out there and you want to rent a great movie, it's called The Front with Woody Allen, and a lot of the co-stars in that movie were actually involved in the scandals. I know that Herschel Bernardi was one.
Yes, sure. Yes, they were. In fact, at the end of the movie, I think they're listed and what they suffered.
Zero Mostel might have been another one.
Yep.
I think he was, yeah.
Yeah, great. John Henry Falk, I remember. I don't know if that name rings a bell to you guys, or probably to Peter, because he was a local kind of a afternoon talk show guy, just folksy thing. He had a kids show that just flashed on this. My mother would bring my brother and I to these Maury Amsterdam. They had a whole bunch of shows on NBC, and we go down and sit in the audience as kids and sometimes participate and what have you in these shows, and they load us up with toys as gifts at the end. They have big, little trucks and stuff and cartons. They take home these big toys, and we get to be on TV, local TV, as kids. And John Henry Falk was one of the hosts of a kids show that I happened to have been on. I hadn't thought about this
really
in a long time. And he was
you were actually on the show.
I was on the kids show, and I was telling I was telling Tally the other day that I used to go down with my family. My mother would take us down to these shows. I didn't remember John Henry Falk, but I told her the story of Maury Amsterdam. He had a kids show, and I don't know if you remember. This was way before Dick Van Dyke, and he had this show Yawk. He'd sing the song Yawk. Remember that? In any event, I go on in my Cub Scout uniform, and before the show, they had everybody, all the kids were going to do something, sing a song, tell a joke. I had no talent. All I could do was stand up there and give the Cub Scout oath, whatever.
That was it.
That was it. So comes time, Maury, we're on the air, this is live. Maury Amsterdam comes up to me. He says, he had a name tag or something. He says, Ralph's going to sing a song.
Huh.
And I looked at him. I said, I wasn't supposed to. He says, here's Ralph singing I wasn't supposed to. So, needless to say, I'm doing a Jackie Gleason for the kids who got to watch me who stayed home sick from school. And I ended up giving the Cub Scout oath to Maury Amsterdam, the late Maury. Tremendous,
unbelievable
character actor. Dick Van Dyke Show was terrific back in the day.
He was on with Rosemarie, right?
Absolutely.
Right.
Yeah.
Yep.
And and of course Dick Van Dyke and Carl Reiner were. It was just a terrific show. In any event,
Ralph, did you sing that song, the Cub Scout oath?
No, I didn't. I just stuttered for a minute when his joke was, "What are you going to sing?" I wasn't supposed to, and he goes, "Here's Ralph. I wasn't supposed to."
That's funny.
Was Sheldon Leonard the producer of that show, Ralph?
Of the Dick Van Dyke Show or the Maury Amsterdam Show?
Both.
I don't know, but
or either. You know who I'm talking about, right?
I
Sheldon Leonard.
I remember that name vividly. Very big in.
He's an actor / producer, director.
Yes, I remember.
Right. That's why he was also blackballed, of course. Sheldon Leonard was blackballed. Hollywood blackball for being a communist. That's why on the Big Bang Theory, the two protagonists are named Sheldon and Leonard. Those are the guys that live together, Sheldon and Leonard.
Right.
Live together on Big Bang Theory. And the reason that they're named Sheldon and Leonard is to pay homage to Sheldon Leonard.
Where did you read that, Peter? That's very interesting.
You know what? I can't remember, but I've known it for quite a while because I'm a big Big Bang Theory fan. In fact, I named my dog Dr. Sheldon Leonard and Dr. Sheldon Cooper, and I've always been interested in the McCarthy stuff with the blackballing, and I know the movie movie you were talking about before, the Woody Allen movie, and at the end of that movie, if I'm not mistaken, they list the people that were blackballed and they were brought up, and
Sheldon Leonard was one.
Sheldon Leonard was one of them, and I'll tell you what, they also, I don't know if it's that movie. I don't think it's that movie, but you could definitely Google it, and you can find out not only the people that were called before that committee, but you can find out the people that named names.
Really?
Oh.
Yeah.
Well,
no doubt about it.
This is going to run together, and here's where we need Ronnie. I don't know if you guys remember that there was an attorney who sat on that committee whose name was Bobby Kennedy.
Robert Kennedy, right. That's right.
Robert Kennedy.
That's right. That's right. He was the chief counsel in that committee.
For McCarthy.
For McCarthy. Joe Kennedy, the old man, was good friends with Joe McCarthy. Okay? And,
is that it?
Yeah, and they were good friends. Jack had nothing to do with him. He didn't like him. Bobby got that job through his father, through Joe Kennedy, to get that job. I'm reading a fascinating book right now. It's by Chris Matthews. It's called Bobby Kennedy. I'm just in about the middle of it now, and it's very, very interesting. If you ever get a chance to pick it up, it really goes through that whole era of the 50s and what went on. And, of course, being from Wisconsin and having Joe McCarthy as our senator, I was very aware of this. Certainly, I was still a kid, but my father, being a big Democrat, was fighting against all of this at the time.
Did your father know Joe McCarthy? Did they come up against each other?
He did know him. He did know him. He didn't care for him. And I remember a couple of elections where we won. We wore buttons that said "Joe must go."
Wow!
When he was running for Senate again, and I think the one that beat him, if I'm not mistaken, was Bill Proxmire. If I'm not mistaken, I think so. But he was a bad guy, bad guy.
Let us not forget. Let us not forget, nor should it be erased in any way, shape, or form in history, that Robert Kennedy, before his brother's assassination in 1963, was a hard-ass anti-communist. I'm not going to say conservative, but certainly much more conservative than he was after he started reading Aeschylus and mourning his brother's demise.
Right. Exactly.
He
took over Jack's congressional run when he was running for the U.S. House of Representatives. And Bobby was not a monkey. I mean, he didn't monkey around. And they had all these people in Boston. And Bobby wasn't in Boston a lot. He was in Washington most of the time. And he used to, all these guys wanted money to campaign for Jack in Boston and area. And they're all looking for handouts. And he roughed a couple guys up and said, "Hey, we're not here for handouts," And it was very interesting. I'm reading in this book how he was a tough guy. That's where he got his title is kind of not bad, not cracker. He was tough, and there was no monkeying around. He was a hard nose, and he definitely was involved in the entire campaign for Jack Kennedy, and then he'd go back to Washington. So he finished the Senate campaign in 1952, working for his brother. And Bobby and Jack didn't get along at all. They never saw each other. I mean, Bobby was in Washington, Jack was in Massachusetts. But when he came back, Joe Kennedy said, "You've got to come back and help your brother." And he realized that he was the one that helped almost single-handedly creating a whole new. He said, "You know what? We don't need these people that are going to hang on with money. We'll create our own people," and that's what they did. Kenny O'Donnell, which was he was Bobby's roommate, That's how he got involved. And
he wrote some great books about that era.
Yes. Yeah, that's
the Irish
right.
Mafia.
Right? The Irish Mafia. I remember Kenny very well. And, Ted Sorensen.
Kenny O'Donnell, you're talking about?
Yeah. Yep. I knew him very well.
Who was the one, was it Kenny O'Donnell? Who was the one that JFK used to call Grand Ole Lovable? Is that Kenny O'Donnell?
I don't think so.
His nickname was Grand Ole Lovable. JFK used to call him that. Huh. JFK used to be lying in a hot tub steaming water, and Kenny O'Donnell would peek in the door and say, Nixon's been up and out since 6 a.m. And Jack would get right up out of the water. I don't think it was Nixon that he was talking about. He was talking about in the primaries, Stuart Symington and LBJ.
And Humphrey.
And Humphrey, yeah.
Right.
Hubert and Wayne. Who am I thinking of? Wayne.
Oh, from Washington, the state of Washington.
Wayne somebody.
Mm-hmm.
Wayne somebody.
Yeah.
I can't remember.
So it was very interesting.
I remember when LBJ got into the race and full-fledged into the race, they asked Jack what he thought of that, and he said, "Yeah, I think he should let Hubert Wayne and I settle this amongst ourselves."
Yeah, that's right. That's right. He was very great that way. And,
he was very funny.
It was very interesting because there was this Kenny O'Donnell, there was Ted Sorensen, Larry O'Brien. Those were, were some of the great guys from the beginning.
That was the Irish Mafia. That was it.
That's right. And Pierre
Triple-decker Irishmen. You know why Ralph, you know why they called them triple-decker Irishmen? In 1946, when Jack Kennedy was running for the House of Representatives, they used to go door to door, and there used to be three-story wooden structures in Boston, and they were of course all Irish, and they called them triple-decker Irishmen, and that's where they used to go door to door and talk to the people and ask for the votes and stuff like that. Yeah. It was quite a campaign. All those campaigns were reading about them are fascinating as hell because when they were taking place, let's face it, when they were taking place, I was too young. Even though I'm an old man, I was too young. I don't remember any of that stuff. I barely remember 1960. The televised debates and
I remember that.
taking the bus to school downtown Newark, where the Republican guys were on the corner with their buttons. You can't lick my dick. the Nixon buttons.
Right.
And I thought that was cute. I wanted one of those buttons, but I never got one. But I was always a Kennedy guy. I used to try to talk my father into it, and my sister used to try to talk my father into it too. But my father thought Jack was too young. Yeah.
My family was strange. My mother's family were Republicans. My father was a Democrat.
Isn't that interesting? Yeah.
But it was, again, times when a Democrat and a Republican were very close in ideology. There wasn't...
they were.
They were. They had disagreements, but they were not like this craziness now. Absolutely not. There was a whole different...
I had an I like Ike button.
Did you?
Yes. I'm old enough to, to remember the significance of the changing of the guard when Truman went out and I came in. A great story about that. Truman and Eisenhower were on the way to Eisenhower's inauguration. They were driving in the car, and Eisenhower said to Truman, "I'm sorry I couldn't have been here for your inauguration." And Truman says, "You would have been had I ordered you to be."
That's true. That's true. Wow. That's right.
They did not like each other one bit.
No, they did
and
not.
And more than that, Truman could not stand Dick Nixon. It was just unbelievably.
Well, he was tricky Dick then too. He was just a slimy guy. He really was.
Yes,
and
he was.
He really was. I mean, I was in the heart of all of this because in 1960, my dad was the one that talked Jack Kennedy into running in the Wisconsin primary in 1960 because he felt that if he could beat Hubert Humphrey in his backyard, it would help catapult him to the nomination, which in fact it did.
True.
He was the first
Did your dad not get along with Hubert Humphrey? Was that it?
Oh, he loved
Hubert
Humphrey.
Precipitated it?
They were good friends. No. They were good friends. I knew Hubert too, and Muriel. They were good people, wonderful people. But my dad had met Bobby and Jack in 1958. There was a Kohler strike, if you recall, the Kohler company that makes plumbing ware, toilets and fixtures, bathtubs. It's right in Sheboygan. And they had a huge strike that was lasted. It was the longest strike in the history of the United States. It was, I think, a 7.5 or 8 year strike. It started in 1954 on April 5th. And it was a very, very bad strike. And there were people that were brothers that weren't talking to brothers because one worked at the company and one became a scab at the company. It was very bad. It was really, really bad. And in 1934, they had another strike where two of the strikers were actually shot from inside the Kohler company and killed on the picket line. So anyhow, so Bobby Kennedy came to Wisconsin. The Senate, John McClellan, had a McClellan Rackets Committee. And Bobby was the chief counsel of the McClellan Rackets Committee. Jack was a senator on that committee. So they were investigating the Kohler strike and the unfair labor practices. And there were a tremendous amount of unfair labor practices at that time. And Bobby came to investigate. He actually stayed at our home. And while he was doing some pre-hearing investigations, Jack stayed at our home in 1960 when he was starting to run for the presidency. But so Bobby hated the Kohler company. He just hated them because of how they treated their employees. It was horrible. You have these bathtubs, these cast iron bathtubs in a mold, and it's very, very hot in the factory. And a worker wasn't allowed to go to a lunchroom for lunch. They were able, they put in a mold and they take a bite of their sandwich and take that mold out. And it was terrible. Women who were pregnant lost their jobs. They never got a job back after they delivered their babies. So, I mean, there were a lot of things. So there was the lawyer for the Kohler company was a fellow by the name of Lyman Conger, Conger. And Bobby hated him because he was a slimy guy, kind of like a tricky Dick Nixon. But he was, and he, in one of the books I read, they said that the two people that Bobby hated the most was Jimmy Hoffa and this Lyman Conger. So, in 1962, so anyhow, my dad met them. He spent 8 weeks in Washington during these hearings because my dad was the chief counsel for the UAW in that strike. And they got to be friendly. And they started talking politics, and my dad convinced Jack to run in the 1960 primary against Humphrey. And he was the first Democrat to nominate, to endorse Kennedy over Humphrey in Wisconsin. So he took me out of high school. Yeah.
Was your dad still alive when Ronald Reagan killed the unions by with the air traffic
My dad
controllers?
died in 1986.
Okay.
So he
lived to see that.
Yes, he did. He did.
That in a way, I'm sorry that he had to experience that. That must have broken his
terrible.
heart.
It was terrible.
Because I think what Reagan did to America through breaking the unions was unforgivable. The only union that lives on is the Baseball Players Association.
That's right. That's right.
The strongest union in this country, and for one reason or another, let's just say Marvin Miller had a lot to do with it. It just remains powerful, and but that's for another show, gentlemen.
Yes, for sure.
This was terrific, Ronnie. Your voice is the best it's been in months.
Thank you. Yeah, sorry I had to cough a couple of times, but you know, I'm recovering. Yeah.
This is. What do you think, Peter? He sounds great.
Ronnie is a very valuable guy, not only for this show, but a million other places, but just speaking for this show and Comfortably Zone Radio generally. To have a voice like Ronnie Rabinovitz, we are very, very happy and very, very thankful.
We're blessed at the network, and Ronnie, I'm blessed personally. You're a good friend.
You are. You and I are all three of us are dear friends. And,
yes, so
wonderful.
That's going to show through in the show. We will have disagreements, but they will not be arguments.
No, that's right. That's right.
You know, because everybody looks at things just a little bit differently, but we have a common denominator, and we're progressives, and we want the world to go on in a different direction than it's going now. And
Absolutely.
I think to do that, we have to learn from the past, not just know what happened, but learn what can be done to avoid the mistakes of the 50s. Because, you know, we're at a point in history where it's getting scary.
It is scary. Very scary.
Wake up in the morning. What is this bimbo gonna say now? How many more people, groups of humanity can he offend? How much can we take?
No, it's terrible.
It's terrible.
What bothers me, Ralph and Peter, the most is that he makes these statements, whether it's on Twitter or he's making them wherever it is, and everybody's focusing on that, okay? While everybody's focusing on that, he's doing something to unravel something else that we're not knowing about, we're not hearing about. It's like, you know, everybody, hey, look at that guy over there. Everybody turns, and then somebody picks your pocket. That's what he's doing. He's picking the pocket of America.
Is he diabolical, or is he just going along for the ride? Is he behind any of this?
That changes week to week for me personally.
It does. Yeah.
Sometimes I think he is, but then I don't give him that much credit to be that smart. So I just think he's going along for the ride. But I really don't know. I know that you yourself, Ralph, have said about a dozen times, maybe 15 times on Facebook that I've read that if he's ever impeached, the next guy in line is even worse. There's a diabolical guy.
That's right.
Right.
He's diabolical because he's intelligent. He's clever.
And then the next guy in line is even worse.
That's what I'm saying.
Ryan.
And I've seen Ronnie say that on Facebook a lot of times, and people just slough it off or they wash over it. They don't comment on it, but it hits home for me personally. It's like a punch in the stomach. It really is, and it almost brings me to a point where I'm rooting for him not to be
impeached.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly. I'm almost rooting for him not to be, because this guy Pence, he's diabolical.
Oh.
Now, he's 100% diabolical,
right.
7 days a week, 30 days a
The
month.
worst thing that Pence can do, there are two things that Pence can do to destroy us. He can de-empower, is that the word, if that's the word, women. And
yes.
Number one. And number two, he can blur the line between church and state.
That's the big one for me.
That's the big one, too.
That's the big one for
me as well. But, I have to say more so with the women, because powerful women take a lot of the pressure off men.
Right.
Yeah.
That's right.
If you think about it, if women are empowered, the world's a better place. But yes, equally and more so, the separation of church and state. And to all my Jewish friends out there, my fellow Jews, who support Trump mainly because of his apparent alignment with Israel, just wanted to make note, as I did on Facebook today, that he's already hedging on the capital of Jerusalem. Having the embassy in Jerusalem. Not so fast, he's saying. Benji wants to do it in a year. Now he's going back and saying, well, you know what? He doesn't help the Jews. He doesn't help humanity. And he just perpetuates the idea that he and Benji are from the same cut of cloth. I got to tell you something about Benji. He's not really looking after humanity. I don't want to hear all the things about the Palestinians this, Palestinians this. No one is more of a bigger Zionist than I am. But there's got to be a time where you come to the peace table. The Arabs have never been inclined for that. So why sandpaper a hungry lion's ass, and as did Trump, and put the embassy, throw out that stuff on the embassy. It's a crazy world, and there's no simple way to look at it. But on this show, we're going to try to go back to the 50s to see how it all got to this point. And I think we can have fun doing it, because there was some terrifically positive things about growing up in the 50s as well. And we're going to explore them, and we'll throw in baseball. We always do.
Oh, yeah. Of course.
That's the name of the game. It all comes back to it. I still struggle, is baseball a microcosm of life, or is life a microcosm of baseball?
That's a good question.
All right. We'll explore it down the line.
That's right.
Peter, take us out. You're the guy.
Okay. I'd like to thank Ralph Tyko and Ronnie Rabinovitz. And again, not really a footnote, more of a headline. We're all very, very enthused and glad that Ronnie's feeling better and that he has improved his health somewhat. And we're looking for more improvement and to stay on course and to listen to your doctors and do everything that they tell you to do, because we want you around here for a long, 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 long time, my friend. And with that, I'd like to you're very welcome. And with that, I'd like to say goodnight to our audience. Thank you for listening. And we'll be back again next week with the 50s, when bums and jints walk the streets of New York.
Love the title.
I do too. Take care.
All right, guys.
Bye-bye.
Next week it is.
Okay.
Adios.
Bye now.